Kenya's official campaign period began today ahead of general elections in August this year. The country has, however, been in a campaign mood for the better part of President Uhuru Kenyatta's second term in office. That follows Uhuru's fallout with his deputy, Dr. William Ruto. Now, there are just over 40 presidential aspirants in the race to succeed Kenyatta, but the battle is really between the two front runners, current Kenya Deputy President Dr. William Ruto and former Prime Minister Raila Odinga. The general elections come on the back of an economy on its knees due to the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic, the ongoing Ukraine-Russia conflict, and of course huge debts incurred by the current administration. In other news, as the Kingdom of Lesotho gears up for the 2022 National Assembly elections, many political parties have kick-started their campaign trails in earnest. One of the newly formed parties, Revolution for Prosperity, is making waves in Lesotho's political sphere. They're launching their first ever manifesto today. SABC News reporter Rapelang Radebe has more for us. All right, so I believe Rapelang is joining us now live on air to talk about this. So Rapelang, let's just first start with the preparations. As we mentioned, they've begun in earnest. Just paint a picture for us how this looks.
Yes, yeah, it was one of those showstoppers. One would actually think the elections will be tomorrow. Huge numbers for a very small party, young upcoming party, to have attracted huge crowds. They literally stopped the entire town. For them to be able to be so organized in such a short space of time, I think was a welcome relief.
Okay, so let's just look at how many parties are contesting the elections first before we zero in on the individual ones, Rapelang.
Yeah, it's a record for a population of 2 million people with just over 1 million voters. There's a record of now 60 political parties that are registered to come and contest this year elections, and we keep seeing more that continue to register. And the question is whether, with Lesotho bearing about 80 constituencies, can these new parties that are coming be able to field candidates in all those constituencies? That is yet to be seen.
All right, just as I was saying, Rapelang, just name them for us, perhaps. And as we mentioned earlier on, there's the Reforms for Prosperity Party that's just newly launched. So we just want to understand who is behind what party and the issues that they have been raising on the campaign trail.
Exactly. I think you would want to appreciate a little bit of the history. Lesotho is mainly, or has been mainly, cut into half with the Congress ideology and the nationalists. This has been the two dominating factors. So when we talk about Basotho National Party, which was one of the first that held the realms of power, and then later on the Basotho Congress Party, which split into several times until I think a significant one was in 2007, when there was a new rhythm that was coming in with the formation of the All Basotho Convention. I think it made its mark because 5 years later, after winning 1780 constituencies, it was able now to come into power. Though it was the first coalition for Lesotho, but they really made their mark by coming into power. By 2014, that is when now the political instability started. There was serious now contestation of power. But now it's 2022 when we see the arrivals of a lot of other smaller parties. But I think what has come to party with the RFP, we are going to see a disruption yet again, because ABC, with its own internal strifes and conflict, they started dismantling itself into factions. Professor Nkosama, splitting from them and other numerous parties. But we are expecting the battle really to be between the Democratic Congress, which is currently in a coalition with the ABC. Those are still two giants when it comes to the political space. We are hoping to see whether this RFP can now come and disrupt that particular party. And the question is, in as much as the leader says he wants to take power and have himself and his party as going solo, because he says the coalitions have really not worked for Basotho. We are yet to see whether is he able to pull the numbers. Can he reach that 50+1 mark, or will he have to be forced to now be joined by another party, and how will they actually make a decision as to whom will they share power?
Do Basotho resonate with what Ndata Matekane is saying? And I'm assuming that's who you're speaking about here, Rapelang. He is known to be a wealthy person who's got a history of philanthropic work. Is this what Basotho are looking for?
Absolutely. I think the arrival of Sam Matekane, look, I've had interviews with him as a businessman. He won the Forbes Entrepreneur of Africa last time. He has really moved. He has come up with things that Basotho had never seen. I mean, his success in business, translated into something I think Basotho could look forward to, because most of them will say, we are probably tired of people who are hungry and go to government simply to feed their stomachs. But I think what he has come up with was his ability to convince other like-minded businessmen. A lot of them simply came and joined hands. The powerhouses, the former bank governor, she's the deputy, a lot of significant people, the faces, some of them we had never seen in the political space. So I think he was saying, let there be fresh thinking, let there be fresh, because Basotho were really tired of the recycling of the old political cows that are coming with old ideologies, and most of them says they are unable to deliver. So the question is, with a very small, limited number of people and candidates of Basotho, are we not going to see a temptation of the old faces resurfacing now, wanting to claim a share because of taking advantage of the new party?
I mean, you and I have spoken about the political reform, the constitutional reform that has been a stumbling block for progress one way or the other. And just going back to what Basotho really want, mirroring the challenges that South Africa has also recently faced, obviously by Rapelang, there's the issue of COVID-19 that has led to massive job losses, entrenched poverty even deeper, and we spoke about the textile industry last time, how this has been one of the industries that has in the past shored up Basotho, but is also struggling. So the kind of solutions and the kind of leadership, what have they articulated that as?
Indeed, I think starting with COVID-19, we've had reports of huge amounts of corruption that rocked the period or the era of where funds were really not unaccounted for. And I think there will be lots of issues that Basotho will be now looking at before making their marks, looking at somebody who can bring fresh solutions to these old problems. And sometimes they say, if you have tried and tested a few of the known so-called experts in political field, maybe you need an entrepreneurial mind to come up with better solutions. Sometimes somebody was saying maybe Lesotho needs to be run like a business and actually get that sense of urgency in transforming the economy. I think these are the kind of debates and issues that people will be looking for. As you talk about the national reforms, it is now an omnibus bill that has gone to Parliament, but there were still also complex issues as to whether will it actually see the light of day. Last week, SADC envoy was able to woo politicians to sign a pact that says they will support those particular elections. Remember, for that omnibus bill to go through, it still requires a 2/3 majority. And this is when some smaller parties and others with vested interest, they start to negotiate, and some even holding it a ransom, making demands that if such and such demands are not there. Remember last week when they said that was LCD wanting that MSN to be returned to power, and others says the courts have made a ruling that he needs to go and face the music, he needs to go and face the courts. But this is the time now where there is horse trading of some of these politicians now, that for us to support this particular bill, you will have to meet us halfway. So there are little political strifes, I think, that will be looked at. And I'm saying, I think this is what Basotho will now judge them on, whether they can deliver and really take them out of the very steep and dark mud that the political turmoils and the economical strifes have gone through in this past few months.
Rapelang, let's talk about the extension of gender rights and representativity, including the extension of that to the LGBTQI plus community. Has there been progress in that realm?
I think with the reforms having come into form, there has been huge consultations, when the teams went into the villages asking the nation as to how they would like to see their rights represented. They spoke about a lot of things, the role of the king in the new era. Should he really be having powers? Some saying he needs to have much more voice. The LGBTQ rights and needs, Basotho are relatively very conservative when it comes to those ideas. But I think some of the issues that were tackled was the equality, especially when it comes to issues of inheritance in families. The girl child always had a problem when it comes to a say as to whether he can have inheritance of the family. When it comes to the rulership, these are issues of the minority that needs to be lots of discussions that needs to take place. But I think the law is opening up into really listening and not deciding what needs to be done, but rather consulting with those who are involved as to how they want to be featured, the laws being formed not for them, but with them.
All right, just a final and important one, Rapelang, safeguards against corruption, because this has also been one of the major electioneering issues. What are the various political parties themselves proffering as suggestions?
You're absolutely right. I think one of the issues that has really been, no politician wants to implement it. This is lifestyle audit, that politicians that wants to assume political power, they need to declare their inheritances. We need to know what somebody comes with, such that when tomorrow people are living like kings and queens amongst the paupers, we need to understand this person only joined politics. How did they suddenly become so rich? None of the politicians, they have all been very hesitant when it comes to implementation. But I think this is one of the things that Basotho is really pushing forward, that before we elect or we nominate these parliamentarians, we need to have lifestyle audit done to them, because some really all of a sudden amass huge wealth, and you begin to understand how is it in such an ailing economy, some people become even richer than the country itself. So I think these are issues that with the reforms, they are encompassed in that particular omnibus bill, but the implementation thereof is what worries, because what was called the National Reforms Authority was recently dissolved, and there has been questions and issues as to how will there be a monitoring and evaluation when it comes to that particular process. But I still think SADC, with his expertise, will still guide and lead even beyond reforms. Because the dangerous part with Lesotho is that you always fear the post-election conflict. It's always a little cool and somber, the calm before the storm. But the problem now, I think, to be watchful for is the post-election conflict. That is where one needs to be worried.
All right, thank you so much for that, Rapelang. And of course, another nation that is also working hard to safeguard that is Kenya. We'll tell you a little bit more about preparations for elections in Kenya. But for now, that was my colleague Rapelang Radebe.